Got a special guest, Tina, today. Tina, welcome.
So
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now,
our
I think
conversation with Chris. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Were you going to say something about Highlighter?
I was just going to give a little preamble because I think Tina's new to Lunchbreak. So I wanted to let you know we're here. Like I was mentioning just a moment ago. Don't stress. We're just hanging out. We're going to talk, and if something magical emerges, then we'll capture the highlights and be able to share them, on Twitter and other places. But otherwise, you're just among friends, hanging out, having lunch. We're even allowed to. I brought my dried mangoes, so it's really lunch break. It's kind of a running joke that I
eat things together, and like DK eats dried mangoes, and we like annotate people's newsletters together.
Oh,
so
dang.
That's the vibe.
That's a vibe, and it's such a brilliant idea. I wonder, like, once you get used to just like talking, kind of scripted, even when you catch up with friends or like actually getting lunch, and like being able to share highlights, what that interaction will look like, because all the
totally
are on Zoom anyways.
Yeah, I feel like it's felt a lot more relaxed to us than any like formal shows, because we don't feel the pressure to like be so performative every second of the stream. It's like we can just do whatever we want, and then that is how the best stuff comes out anyway. It might just be like scattered throughout a longer period of time, but then you can like pull out really good stuff. And that's how it felt with Chris too. We had such an awesome discussion with him. I think it was one of my favorite ones. Like, someone messaged me after being like, this was one of like the top highlighter sessions of all time.
Wow.
And we were just like,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to work with him every day, for sure. He has one of the most interesting minds I've encountered.
Well, so do you. I was reading some of your Substack and like about fake pixels, which I want to ask you about, but beautifully written and such thoughtful articles here about things that we actually have been talking about a lot. Like, let me share one in chat. I don't know if anyone...
I just shared fakepixels.substack, right? Is the one?
Yeah.
Is that the right link? Yeah. Cool.
I loved this, the illusion of free-to-play one. DK, had you seen this one before?
I haven't seen it yet, no. Should we talk through it? Or I could do a quick solo read if I assume.
I would love to. Here's one quote that really stuck out to me.
Oh, wow. I was on another tab, and I just realized there's a discussion thread on the right. That's
yeah. We just pop links and stuff in there.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, no, I would love to talk about this. Like, so to me, one of the ideas was that we all know the saying, "There's no free lunch." The convenience of tech platforms has blunted our senses to our economic reality. So kind of thinking like more critically about when we engage with these platforms in the past and now, like what actually are we paying? And how is that changing over time? And like, what will that look like in the future? But I'm curious kind of how you started thinking about this stuff, and what's your sense of like time dimension there?
Yeah, totally. Without, going too much into everything about kind of what inspired this piece, but generally, I think this idea of free has been around, since the beginning of marketing. Like, there's this, the razor and blade model, right? Like, you give out the hardware for free, and then you give the hardware for free, and then you actually charge for the software. Or just a very simple, like, I'm going to give you a free cappuccino downstairs as a marketing technique.
Mm-hmm.
People are very familiar with these kind of mechanics because it's very obvious. It's like, okay, I know how they make money. And I'm willingly, as a consumer, to support that business model because I love the product. But then I think the dynamics really changed when we really start to see these internet businesses begin to monetize in a way that's becoming more and more obscure. And that's kind of the genesis of this piece, is that, you know, for a very long time, people don't know how Facebook makes money and Google makes money, because it's just like, I can't search anything for free, like Facebook can use it for free. And like, okay, maybe there are ads, you know, and you know, how those ads are being designed, or what's the algorithm behind that. Like, people kind of know that it's creepy, or like it, you know, it's personalized towards you, but the actual mechanics of how it works, like I think a lot of people don't know how cookies work. And, you know, one example that I mentioned in my post is that, you know, WeChat, right, is a completely free app. And actually every single software and gaming in the Tencent ecosystem is free. So I'm Chinese, and I grew up in China, so my family is still in China. And my mom, you know, would call me every day. And one day I'm just like writing this piece, and I was like, Mom, do you know how WeChat makes money, or how Tencent makes money? And she literally has no idea. She's like, ads? And I was like, there's no ads with WeChat. Talking about. So that's like kind of like the initial reaction when we talk about like even internet platforms. Like, okay, it's like either ads or they charge something, and it's, you know, very sophisticated how increasingly so internet businesses actually, you know, monetize. And it's not just through selling goods. It's actually by capturing your attention. And that's, people have written about it, called attention economy. But even taking one step further is charging your identity. So your entire identity becomes the cost of this platform, where if you leave this platform, you have an existential crisis, which is a kind of a scary thing. So one example of that is, you know, in gaming, right? Like, you know, this guy that I wrote about who spent, you know, back then, now we think about it with NFT stuff, it's like really trivial, but back then spending thousands of dollars on Clash of Clans is like a big thing. And, you know, he built basically a fraternity within the game, and was like a ranked player. And he was kind of doing these meaningless jobs, which kind of makes sense why he was finding escapes in these games. And I think a lot of people were, you know, saying that, you know, he totally lost his mind. And I actually thought that the New York Times piece that did a feature on him was actually a very empathetic view on his life. It's like he actually found a community where his identity was tied to these platforms. And the reason why the game is so successful is that they just know human psychology so well, to an extent that they can create these loops to continue to monetize you. By, you know, giving you this kind of play to win mechanism, like you have to pay to continue to play the game. But even that has gotten a little old, because people are like, okay, I'm just not going to touch it if I know I'm going to get addicted. So then it comes like the next wave, which is like, you know, the Fortnites of the world, where, you know, they're like, you completely free to play. You can enjoy just as much fun, you know, of the gameplay, but you can monetize through, you know, battle passes or cosmetics, or, you know, things that really just make you cooler, but doesn't really affect you as a gamer. And like all the new games that we're seeing, like Valorant, and the latest game is Valheim, I think. Sorry if I got that wrong, but I haven't been that in touch with that one. But I think they kind of monetize similarly. So kind of the whole idea of this piece is like, one is to illuminate that these things have a cost, and that cost is a lot more existential than just monetary value. And the second thing is like, okay, if this will be the business model moving forward, where, you know, from gaming all the way now to product-led growth, basically like freemium products, and then you bring into your organization where they let you pay for it. So the entire stack, like, what does that mean, and how does that affect the way that we actually perceive value, which becomes harder and harder. And from a both an entrepreneurial perspective and, you know, investors' perspective, when we evaluate companies, we can no longer just talk about the goods and services that they offer and just compare those. We have to actually compare the actual value that they're creating. For example, like for Grubhub, right? Like and DoorDash, like from a consumer perspective, from an investor perspective, it's like, okay, two food delivery companies, and from a consumer perspective, okay, I just get my food, and it's not that much different. But like the actual value of something like a DoorDash is the infrastructural and the logistical network that actually became going to be more valuable than the actual goods and services being delivered. And that's a complete different business model from Grubhub. And similar with kind of like Shopify versus Amazon. I think this is kind of different, but from a consumer perspective, I'm buying the same good, but now I'm buying from Shopify versus Amazon. But the value is actually accruing to the Shopify buyer more when they kind of shop from Shopify versus when they sell on Shopify versus when they sell from Amazon, besides like all the other things like, you know, being able to differentiate your brand by having a separate website. But that's a ramble. That's kind of the whole idea behind this idea of kind of free to play. And I see that kind of playing out across a lot of different industries, and gaming is just an inspiration of it.
Yeah, I wonder in the example, some of the examples you gave in gaming, you talk about like Fortnite has more of a, let's call it like it's free to play, but not free to win. You pay to self-express or to kind of show status in different ways, you know, with skins and stuff and dances. And so, you know, is that actually closer to how value works in the real world today? Like, is that the closest thing we have? I'm trying to just map the analogy of like the things that exist in the real world today, you know, exist because they've gone through some Darwinian selection process of human needs service. And, you know, I think a lot of that is, you know, you could break it down as some utility, some kind of brand or kind of self-expression value. And I wonder if actually the Fortnite model of like all the utility is included, but, you know, you're only paying for self-expression value is maybe more of a natural analogy to what happens in the real world today. Do you feel like that's, I'm kind of just hypothesizing it, but is that sort of a fair way to look at it, you think?
No, that's a very interesting point. The physical and digital, I think that this has to go back a little bit, even to like kind of pre-internet. I'm thinking about the physical world, is that I think because of the abundance that is enabled by the internet, mostly out of information and communication technology, kind of a pre-internet world is so much easier to gatekeep and to basically make artificial scarcity a physical reality. So for example, I can just say that this park is better and no one can really research that, and this is scarce, or like this piece of this brand or this clothing, whatever, it's, you know, better, superior, has longer history. I mean, a lot of that is true, and that's where a lot of the craftsmanship and some of the top brands are. But for a long tail of brands, you really can't tell, and you can't do that research. And people are somewhat limited more so within the periphery of kind of what they can see and what they can purchase. Versus once everything's online, I think that abundance becomes so clear. So what do you compete against? It has to be against like the access that, you know, I think in the physical world, it's even harder to get to that point yet. I'm kind of distracting from your question, but going back to your question, back to your question a little bit, I think it's both kind of reminiscent of the physical world, but I think also quite different in the sense that like the digital world is like abundance first versus a scarce first mindset. And then I think in the digital world, any scarcity is actually through the network that you foster. So something becomes valuable because the network that's adjacent to it, versus, not saying that in the physical world that's not true, but in the physical world, like physically, like lands and water are constraints, and people are kind of, this is going back to human history where, you know, people fought wars and they have to like create war because they have to keep population in control. And that's a very different story to optimize for another set of resource allocation versus, you know, this digital and physical world.
I'm thinking further about sort of my choices online and sort of what I pay for. So like, you know, Netflix is an example of a service that I pay for, and it doesn't doesn't really have a, I mean, every incremental, every marginal user doesn't really have any cost for Netflix, but they get the benefit of the full subscription value. And we're actually paying for this content that is not, it doesn't need to be scarce, but they create scarcity. And I'd say the scarcity ultimately flows through the real world in the form of like film production, because it's hard to produce a good film. And, there's a lot of risk that you take in assembling all of the assets to do the storytelling and shooting and stuff. So I think there is scarcity from the real world that they try to incorporate into their bundle to which is then scarce, and then they can sell that. And when you think about like the Fortnite example, it's more that self-expression thing. So it's almost like, or just like real-time thinking, but is there something about the fact that like virtual worlds can monetize primarily through self-expression, whereas other content forms that are not virtual worlds will end up being more kind of content bundles, even if the content itself is not scarce? Or how do we kind of prosecute those ideas or kind of write those?
Like personally, I still kind of count content as like a piece of asset that lives on a platform. So whether that content is digital or physical, I think it matters less. I feel like how that content is being presented or distributed or consumed or exchanged on a platform, and that platform can be both physical and digital in this case, is what makes the difference. But I think those two are kind of different concepts in terms of like, I think the Netflix example is very interesting. Is that I think in the future, there is a future because Netflix now has the power of, the best in class, kind of both operational excellence, the best in class, data engineering team who recommend you the best, best TV shows. But over time, when those technology even become commoditized, and assuming that the cost of producing a high quality film, or people just don't want to watch really highly produced film anymore. They just want to watch like mini series that's like TikTok stars in a house, right? Nothing the Kim Kardashians, where it's like the photon. It's like now we reflect back to like Shakespearean, theaters with, all the craft and, the beauty. We will marvel at it, but, we like a different set of consumption model now than before. So it's even not crazy to imagine that like people will just want to make their drama at home or something like that, like a family series with Netflix infrastructure. So we already like saw a bunch of companies at pace where, they're building Netflix for everyone. It's like, if Netflix is Amazon, like there is a Shopify for Netflix. So it's crazy.
And so this is, just to make sure I understand the analogy. So Shopify empowers a store creator to run their own website independent of like the Amazon ecosystem. They can choose to participate or not. And so in the Netflix for everyone, is it like, I, as a filmmaker, have an easy set of infrastructure to launch and host my own website and make my own sales? Is that kind of the idea?
Like your own, let's say, maybe your own Netflix, or you and like your squad of filmmakers that have similar taste. Let's say A24 is trying to do this with their exclusive network. Like I think the media, like with all the copywriting, IP, and a lot of these complexities and how the industry works, this is really hard. So like I think this is what I'm kind of proposing. It's really theoretical, but from a technology perspective, it is possible that a film director can now create their own Netflix basically, and then curate the people that they want on the platform. And people who subscribe to Netflix, probably watch 5 shows that they really like within a given genre, and they can subscribe to this taste. Like, for example, I love A24, and I can just subscribe to all A24 films and pay a subscription fee that might even allow me deeper integration into the engagement with the director, Q&A with the actors, or whatever services that is.
Right, it almost sounds like, I mean, there's certainly apt analogy between Shopify, but it almost also kind of has hints of what Substack is doing, right? Because it's almost like the Substackification of Netflix. Like, could you give the sets of tools to A24 to host their own collections? Because it's like, actually it's a bundle, right? It's not it's not hosting a single kind of movie or filmmaker, but it's still like a bundle of related genre, content, interest, audience.
Yeah.
Reminds me almost of Nathan's Every bundle, right?
Yeah, totally. There's also the curation element of it. Like for filmmakers, you could have, it's maybe the Substack analogy, but you could start thinking of interesting things with like tastemakers. Like if I really trust Tina's taste in film, maybe she has some sort of alliance with the people that she chooses to promote on her like Pinterest. We're like mixing all of the metaphors right now, but yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, is that a new type of influencer to emerge, which is like a film tastemaker? So effectively, you have a big audience on Instagram, and you can, and they all care about similar themes, similar topics, and you could use that audience and build like bundles and subscriptions to give access to individual filmmakers to that kind of audience and tastemaking.
Yeah, we already see this behavior emerging, like on any platform. It's like people love making mood boards, back even from Tumblr. And now on Instagram, I follow tons of just film collection or curation accounts that those curators are doing this for free. I don't think they get anything from this, right? But I think they are creating value. And going back to the value exchange part, I feel like these are the people that haven't found like a true identity or a true platform that can speak to their whole identity, that they love film and like what do they do with that knowledge and who's going to pay for that knowledge. You can see that Substack can potentially do that. You can write film reviews, but I just feel like it's just the beginning and there's so many dimensions and there's a lot of growth areas there.
I wonder to what extent it makes sense for these kind of curation enabling networks to be niche in terms of like film, books, like journalism, gardening, whatever it is, versus do you just end up will people end up finding the most value at the whole person level? Like I don't care about the vertical, I just want to know what DK is consuming in general or like cares about in general. And so we kind of talked about before a little bit, we were riffing on this idea of like a shareable sort of bulletin board of just like Apple Notes and kind of coming off of also watching what Chris is doing with frameworks, but like pictures, maybe links to films you're watching, just sort of like just you. So like, do you think this sort of thing will end up being more appealing to people at that sort of like meta person level, or do you think it'll start off with these niches of like Substack is for writing, maybe you find something for film and so on?
That's a great question. I think maybe I can see both. I think like what you described is more exciting, like a horizontal layer. Like it's kind of like early MySpace is kind of what I'm thinking about, where you kind of like have different widgets you can embed and show your taste. And I think like I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like, what is the craziest way like people can showcase what they want and what they like, and what's the why now for, like why they're showcasing it. I feel like one element that I've been tracking really closely, and I think it's really exciting, is the fact that like, advertising on, Google and Instagram are kind of at peril because of, the cookie regulation. So what's life post cookie? Everyone's asking that question, and people are looking into like the new frameworks for new kind of regulatory changes in that regard. But I feel like it's actually a great way to just think from first principle, like what will make sense. And I think like it just makes a lot of sense for me to purchase stuff from people that with the taste that I admire. So like one of our portfolio company, like Nexus.gg, like you buy games from streamers that you watch, which makes a lot of sense. So like what does it mean to buy like a coffee mug from like, you know, someone who I really admire? And those coffee mugs are actually, you know, small businesses that because the advertising cost of bidding on Instagram and Facebook got higher, now there's actually an alternative way for them to make money, you know, to make money through this affiliate marketing model, but like more so not just focusing on micro influencers on Instagram, but actually just like people that with good taste or people locally that you trust.
So I just shared the link for Nexus.gg, and I was cruising around on the site right now. So I'm trying to understand it a little bit better. Is it sort of like if you're a streamer, let's say you're a Twitch streamer, is this effectively kind of like the link in bio phenomenon for Twitch streamers?
Yep. That's a great interpretation.
Cool. I just shared beacons.ai because I was going to ask you about the link in bio phenomenon. And to see if you have any kind of more, you know, thoughts about that in general, but I'd never heard of Nexus.gg. That seems like a really cool way to be able to like merchandise to a specific set of people with specific sets of like commerce in, you know, instincts or desires sort of already established.
Yeah, totally.
And are these mostly, is it primarily a kind of Twitch streamer phenomenon, or these people may show up kind of anywhere? Is it mostly kind of video centric formats, maybe YouTube, or is this also big on like an Instagram? Would this be a common kind of link in bio phenomenon from Instagram too?
Yeah, I think it's actually everybody has this desire to curate, like from a business person, you know, who wants to curate like the best investing lessons that they've learned, to a music lover who loves making playlists. To now, I think wallet, you know, NFT wallets is a great way to showcase, either to flex that you do have the assets to be able to own these assets, but I think a big part of it is also to showcase that you're part of this movement. So yeah, so I think it can be everybody.
And it sounds like Nexus is mostly focused on kind of commerce game content. Is that the main?
Sorry, are we still talking about Nexus? Sorry. So.
Was that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I thought we were talking about like kind of creators in general. And in terms of Nexus, yeah. So their primary target audience is Twitch streamers who are trying to.
The thing that I'm curious about around these, and I've seen a bunch of these kinds of, you know, let's call them kind of link in bio aggregation points, and a lot of them turn out to be like very focused on commerce optimization, let's say. So you're sort of, you know, in your content creation on the native platform, you're describing, oh, you can buy this thing, link in bio, and then people go there to go find it, and then that thing needs to showcase all the right things in the right order. What's the newest thing that you're talking about, and kind of figure out sort of, you know, probably some combination of algorithm and possibly some, you know, some additional curation there. But I haven't seen a lot of them that I think get at the self-expression side very well. And I wonder if there's like just so much utility in the commerce that the self-expression just doesn't matter that much, or the self-expression is going to live on the native platform, and so the commerce is like always going to be an adjacent, or you know, sort of. Do you agree with the framing of that kind of commerce versus self-expression trade-off, and do you think one just gives rise to the other, or is it really more of a commerce-focused phenomenon long term?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think Chris actually wrote about this in his frameworks as well, but we talk about this a lot, which is every creator has a native platform and native medium, and for some people that is content, and for some people that's actually commerce. So there, you know, we all know a few celebrities that are actually not as good at the thing that they do in terms of like they're not as like they're not the world class or like award-winning musician, but they're really good at, you know, leveraging the fame that they got from, you know, performing music to, you know, selling or selling merch or like fashion design, which actually they might find more success in. And it's great. It's like, you know, Virgil Abloh, for example, was an architect and was an architecture student. And he found his native medium as fashion, and was able to express that. So, yeah, I think your question is hitting on a very important nuance where, you know, why do these link in bio kind of infrastructure don't look more interesting? I think honestly, I hope so too. I hope they look a lot cooler. But I think, as you said, the utility is so high that they have to be a horizontal platform that works for everybody at this moment. But I also think that this is only the beginning of, like, you know, people wanting to become a business of like this entity that is a complete kind of showcase of who I am, and they want to manage everything.
Yeah. How do you how do you think about doing that for yourself? Like, when you want to share kind of what curated things you're reading or consuming or watching with other people, do you end up doing it across different platforms? Or I also was curious to ask you about like Fake Pixels and the whole genesis of that collective and how that works. But yeah, no, how do you do that in your everyday life right now?
Yeah, to be honest, like, I am the user of all these creator economy companies, because like I still feel like we're only in the early stage of building in this market, although there's a lot of hype right now, but I feel like building takes a lot of time. And in terms of how I manage everything, it's pretty manual. Like, I try to aggregate everything into, you know, a ghost infrastructure, but I still love the ease of use of Substack because it's just literally so easy. And I'm not charging, so like I don't really care about the take rate. But in terms of Genesis story, I've always liked writing growing up, and I've always liked creating. So I think that's just a way for me to kind of give back in a way that I consume. I consume so much stuff, and I was like, without these things, I would never be where I am because I learned everything from the internet. So like the one way to give back is like, okay, so this is what I learned. I'm gonna share it if somebody cares. I think it feels good to create too. It's a way to kind of find what you care about and what excites you. It's almost like as good as journaling, especially when I write in a way that it's not trying to be a VC newsletter. Although like now it's like pretty classic that a VC would have a Substack. But I actually started writing.
But it feels very different. Yeah, it feels very different when like I read your stuff. And also like I'm not sure how the collective works. I saw that people can kind of apply to join this community. So how are you thinking about that, and what's been going on there?
Well, to be very honest with you guys, like I wish I had more time to foster this community. There's some of my amazing, talented writer friends are in this community, and there's just amazing people that I want to get to know more, that we got connected through writing. But right now it's really just, you know, a tight form, and then I send them an invite, and then they're in this Telegram group, and I'm not really like active to moderate this group or like create discussion topics. Like something like this would be amazing for the community, that I wish I could have done more, but I'm just not doing. And I think like seeing one of my really good friends, Mario, like he's doing really, really cutting edge stuff with the generalist, especially leveraging all the tools. Yeah, all the tools out there that's available. And I was like, that's awesome, and I can't wait to try all of them. Like once I, get a little less busy at work. But it's like, I'm very excited to try.
Yeah, what's your process of like when you find the seed of an idea that eventually becomes one of these articles? Is it, you know, something that you've noted down, think about for a while? Do you process like kind of Chris and his frameworks? Is there stuff that you're thinking about right now? Like, kind of take us through the mind of Tina from like Gen
I'm thinking about too many things, girl. Like,
Love that.
um,
You and Chris work together, I can tell. Just mind meld going on.
I know. Hold on. I literally have an Excel sheet that is just called writing roster. It's just
that's epic.
things that I really want to write. And I have a lot of notebooks lying around my apartment. So I always have new ideas. Most of them are terrible and I just didn't, see the light of the day. And honestly, like, the ambition of Fake Pixels, like for a while I wrote once a week and that was taking away everything in my life. Like I couldn't hang out with anybody. I couldn't hang out with friends. You can ask Chris and Jordan. I was in the Pace office on weekends. Although they are like kind of short, but it actually took a lot of time to make it really good. So I was like, maybe this is not sustainable. So I was like, maybe I'm going to go, in shorter frequency, but like higher quality or like deeper analysis. So that's kind of the route that I'm taking. I started writing like the kind of internal Fake Pixels actually 2 weeks ago to express that, kind of scratch that itch a little bit to just want to write something short and sweet and thoughtful, and some like simple analysis. But some of the longer piece, ambitious piece, I have a list right here. But
I actually like the idea of taking these ideas you have and getting them out in a somewhat raw format. So effectively, I think this is one of our takeaways from the session where we chatted with Chris was how important the Google Doc format is for expressing to anybody who sees it that these are works in progress. And this isn't meant to be the seriousness of a Medium piece or maybe the seriousness of like, I published this on my Substack because I've fully thought of it and here's my final ideas. But I wonder if you could, it's almost like, I don't know if it's a new riff on a format in Substack, but like you could imagine any idea you take, you open up a Google Doc and stub out a paragraph worth of that idea, totally unpolished, and you just like slide it into the next, as a link at the end or at the top of your next actual published piece. And you kind of create this habit where people understand that, hey, here's the published and deeply thought through thing, but then here's a bunch of ideas. Maybe it's not even just one, maybe here's a bunch of ideas that I'm noodling on, and like chime in and comment and highlight and help me make these ideas better, and let's kind of write together. So it might help sort of lower the stress or threshold what it takes to publish.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like Chris and I talk about this all the time. I was like, I think it's Chris's like native medium. I think he's so good at iterating and continue to polish this piece. And I think I should start doing that. We're thinking like maybe we should just use Google Docs as, the Pace publication. That's why we created like the Pace desktop, mostly I think also inspired by the idea that, it's a desktop, so you keep adding stuff on it, and then people want to go back and check, like, oh, what's new? Like, what's new in the folder? Like a real desktop. So that is a great idea, but I think I just need to shake off some of my old habits of like needing to finish a piece. I definitely have that burden more because I've been writing for such a long time.
Right.
Yeah. What are some of the most interesting things to you on that Excel or Google Sheets thing that you're thinking about?
Man, this is an opportunity for me to just like hold myself accountable because now I share this with you guys. One piece that I'm very, very excited about, but to be honest, I'm very scared to write, but it's always a good sign when you're scared of writing something. It's called Lost in Translation, and kind of comma a few words on China tech. So I'm a Chinese, so like I grew up, always been inspired by Chinese entrepreneurs because a lot of them were self-made and kind of came from nothing. But China is also very complex, kind of both political and economic system, extremely hard to navigate, and the kind of size of the market is just crazy, and having a very visceral experience growing up. So I came to the US for high school, and I went home probably like twice or once a year And every time I went back, it's literally like a different city. And that is crazy to me. And the tech companies, every time I went back, there's a new like hot space. So I've been tracking this ever since I was even in high school. And that's why I think I have just this natural attraction to tech. But I realize a lot of these kind of the analysis on Chinese tech companies and products that I've been seeing on Twitter or around, are focusing really acutely on the business model or the company or the product or the technology, which are very, very important components of, a company. Mm-hmm. But without understanding China actually as a country, right? Like understanding all the political complexities and understanding the demographic, understanding culture, is actually hard to actually understand why those companies are successful. Like, for example, like we can be, talk about like live streaming shopping, right? Like in China, that was drove 80% of the e-commerce growth. But people were like, okay, this is a massive opportunity we're going to do in the US. And, it's working, but it's not like working that well yet. Because in the US, there's already QVC, there's already these alternatives. Not saying that in China there isn't, but there's a lot of other complex reasons and a lot of words in Chinese tech analysis that they use that are just non-existent in the US tech ecosystem. So like the ambition of kind of this piece is to distill down probably 5 to 6 key words that I think really matter to really understand China. And, maybe it's going to be a multi-part series where I break down like 1 or 2 words at a time to kind of, basically the words that got lost in translation.
I like that.
Yeah. That's the idea.
What's one of the words that you haven't found a corollary for in kind of English tech analysis?
Yeah. So one word is called like sinking market. So you can think of the market as like it's sinking. So in China, that means that there's a huge market and majority of population. So like we see the glamour of like JD or Tencent. A lot of these companies were like NetEase, Baidu, Alibaba, even like all these companies are born out of kind of first tier or second tier cities. So those cities have really good economy. The people are very well educated. But the shadow of that economy is the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th tier cities. Those are the people that have to immigrate to the cities to get a identity. So without the city identity, they can't get any of the city benefits, nor they can actually be treated, as almost like a class citizen, which is really unfortunate. And they're the kind of the cheap labor that these platforms can leverage to scale so quickly. So like all the Ubers in China and there's time like now, even you go back to China, you see like Meituan, which is the largest kind of the DoorDash of China. The people who wear this yellow, they wear this yellow suit and they literally like would risk their life to deliver orders. Like they don't care about cars, don't care about anything. They're so fast. And these are like kind of the labor infrastructure of China that actually are also supporting another economy, which gave birth to a company like Pinduoduo. So Pinduoduo is an interesting business model, right? Like it's people are basically splitting something to create a larger order to buy something, which is like not that much of a novel idea, but it's interesting because it both provides entertainment and it provides this, I think in China it's called fleet economy, where it's like you're literally repeating. I think in the US it's basically drop shipping, but in China that all happens without export. So it's all happening internally. The same goods is being sold on Pinduoduo, and then Taobao is the higher tier, and then there's Xiaohongshu, which is the for Shanghai and Beijing elites. So like the same goods can be sold through all these channels at different price points, and using the same production facilities and manufacture, and it's pretty wild. And without these the sinking market and understanding how a product can penetrate through those markets to kind of go into their phase 2, I think it's very essential to understand how to actually tame the Chinese market, or even understand whether a product is native to that market or whether that is a growth opportunity for them. So yeah, I think that part of China people don't talk about enough.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. Yeah, I think within the context, maybe it's the context of the Lost in Translation article, or maybe it's a separate context. But are there are there things that you could help? Many of us who have most of our life experience in the West, we probably have a tough time seeing some of that bridge, and so I think you can both help illuminate some of that bridge. But can you help showcase some of the things that do work in China that don't work here, and why don't they work? Is there some sort of other cultural itch that gets scratched in a different way, or what is it that I think about, like you mentioned, the rise of these live streaming things. I know it's a huge phenomenon in China. I've never used those apps, but I know that there's now, like, green shoots of these things kind of working. And so how do we look at one of these things and say, oh, this is human behavior that's going to translate well from China, or, oh, there's something peculiar about the way this is distributed with WeChat that is going to allow it, or the way that people care about congregating in a collective buying decision that we don't really have the equivalent to. So I think, I don't know if it's the same piece or separately, but I would like to hear, maybe it's, lost in translation, version 2, but something about sort of how do we understand our market better and understand the differences with China.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Yeah, that's something definitely I would like to write more about too. And even in US, right? Like, I think, the US elites, kind of, the coastal markets sometimes don't understand the
Yep.
rest of the US at all.
Yep.
I think it's similar, lost in translation. And I think people are, a lot of talented writers and investors are, building that bridge as well. And like, I think similar work can be done too with China.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I also wonder how much of this stuff will start to seem more homogenized over time. Like, if everyone is watching Netflix, I guess there's two realities we talked about, right? Like, everyone's watching Netflix, and Netflix kind of curates what the global top 5 shows are, and there's, like, more shared cultural context, versus do we start seeing, like, more and more splitting into subcultures and sub-issues, like the Netflix Substack idea we talked about, or kind of more personalized curation. Whichever direction, like, the next few years lean could have big implications to the idea you're talking about as well, feels like.
Totally. And the interesting thing about the internet is that both realities coexist. Like, I think the big can get bigger, but the long tail can also get longer. I think that's something that people don't talk about enough. I think it's very like one or the other, but I feel like there's a lot of times when the two realities both get bigger at the same time. But of course, like, you can like something that a graph that really blew my mind yesterday, or like I've been thinking about, is like how people would think that the existence of the internet would take away attention from other media like radio or TV or other sorts of consumption. But actually, like, people just generally consume more media in general. So like, even though the actual, like, it's kind of this chart where it breaks down different sources of media consumption, they all stay kind of flat, but the internet just gets bigger and bigger, and people's time consuming media is just bigger and bigger, which is a very interesting kind of thought. Where I think maybe people would both consume all these mainstream media just to stay relevant, but also they have more options to choose from.
Totally. Yeah, Eugene Wei actually had an interesting point where he was like, the competitors that Netflix should be thinking about are not just other, like, film streaming sites, but really like Fortnite and online shopping and like anything else you can do with your time. Even sleep, he said. Like, if you really zoom out and think of all the options someone has to do with their evening. So yeah, like, what is that evolving landscape of like most immediate choices that like one consumer kind of thinks about when it comes to their attention and directing their time? I think you're getting at that.
Totally.
Yeah. Who are people that you thinkers on like some of this internet culture stuff, or anything really that you have been reading and really admire, like books, newsletters? What are you consuming these days?
It's so hard because a lot of my friends are newsletter writers, and I admire like all of them. My favorite. So recently, I've gotten into kind of like a fintech rabbit hole because we're spending a lot of time in fintech at Pace, and I never thought I would be the kind of person who will be into fintech, to be quite honest with you. Although I like the kind of the technology and the complexity around it, but I've always, thought that for some reason I just never really got interested in it. But then I think increasingly so realizing how kind of ineffective or unproductive our existing piping is. I was literally looking at like the Fed's 2019 report or something like that and seeing like it actually costs very little to wire like ACH and just any sort of business institutional wires as well. And, most of the cost lies in the intermediary, but like this is public knowledge now. But conducting those analysis from a very, first principle perspective actually was like, wow, there's so much to be built here. And kind of like understanding the creative kind of, I guess, rebundling of financial products within the workflow is very, very interesting. So like, we care a lot about creator economy, and a big part of that is financing, your creative endeavors. And how do you underwrite the risk of creating something? And the bank is not going to say that you have 500 YouTube followers or like, that many likes that I'm going to give you this risk score. It takes someone who actually understands how the internet works to be able to underwrite that. So
do you suspect that it's going to be individual platforms where primary work is done that would be the best underwriter of such, or do you think it will become like these cross-platform underwriters who can assess, this YouTube scale, this Instagram scale, I can underwrite it as such?
Right. I feel like there's, again, like my answers are always so unsatisfactory, but like I feel like there's both.
Okay.
The fundamental kind of knowledge about, a person, like kind of general financial health, right? That has been done relatively well with credit score and all that, but that's only one element of it, or business credit. But then there's additional layers of underwriting mechanisms that can layer on top of it and create a more holistic view. And I think when there's a big delta between kind of two different views, then people at least have the option to look into what's going on versus just like a complete no.
Right. But like in the creator economy world, let's say you're Substack and you have like a lot of good visibility into what somebody's revenue and growth is on your platform, and then you could presumably do some underwriting of those people for cash advances or loans. Or you could do things like help them bundle in new talent or kind of recognize early recognition of talent to help the platform itself bundle and underwrite creative work there. And I think there's already some of this. I think they just announced a program that they're doing some of this. I thought I just saw kind of a headline about it. But I wonder how much of it is platform centric, where the audiences and or revenue are well understood by a platform. Versus, certainly I think the traditional financial ecosystem doesn't have any way to assess any of this, but how much of it is going to accrue to the actual platforms versus how much of it is going to be cross-platform? And is cross-platform actually like a bigger phenomenon than the single platform where somebody, really like Mr. Beast's business is YouTube, and he could have a big Substack if he wanted, but my guess is he hasn't invested in that and doesn't care as much about it. I wonder, is the future more going to be more deep focus on a single platform and then the platforms do great underwriting, or is there going to be like a big market of cross-platform?
It
like
makes
multimodal
sense.
type.
Right. I think that the cross-platform one is obvious. I feel like that will probably be the case because most creators multi-house so many platforms. Again, I think it depends on how much of that creator's revenue concentration is on one platform. And whether that platform has the ambition to continue to create services for that creator, kind of basically meaning integrate deeper into their workflow. or stack. But I think because the creator have so much flexibility and power now, kind of with all these new companies changing their or like iterating on their business model, the multi-platform sounds a little bit, I think, more interesting in a sense. Although I do think that, individual platforms for early creators would also want to incentivize them by like providing them these options. But I think it's hard to be the primary source of kind of, capital provider unless they only sit on one platform.
Right. I think about products. I'm not super deep on it, but this product Stir, that's kind of a dashboard for managing. It almost seems like if you were a dashboard to manage across different creator tools, that you might end up backing into being able to be like that underwriter finance arm. But I guess that's a little bit once you've got some established momentum versus like how do you see the next generation of risky creative work?
Totally.
We sometimes talk about like the Y Combinator for everything.
Oh yeah.
Idea. I think I recall. I think it was Eric Tornberg's the first place I saw that idea articulated as such. But it's like a compelling idea. Like whenever there's creative work being done, there's probably like high risk of failure, but the outcomes can be huge. And are there ways to like help the outcomes subsidize more experimentation for the kind of the broader set? So everyone's livable and there's still big successes, but you actually can encourage more creativity in the world and more human progress overall.
Totally. Yeah.
Are there specific kind of, I don't know, fintech thinkers who are also thinking about this kind of creator economy type angle that you've been enjoying?
I actually just read the pretty general fintech newsletters, and specifically, I think spending a little bit more time reading fintech stuff or DeFi stuff. So like Bankless is a great one, like Fintech Blueprint I really like. Those are all really great fintech newsletters. But yeah, fintech is a newfound love. So I am like kind of like in the honeymoon phase with fintech.
That's so fun though. It's the best. It's like totally new at something and
totally.
Yeah. I was also curious, like stepping way back. One thing I saw your Medium as well, and you had this post on.
Oh my god, that is embarrassing.
No, it's really good. It was really good, and we actually have been talking about some of this stuff a lot on here with different people. But just in terms of like where your mind was at when you were in college, and how you ended up deciding that. Well, first of all, how you ended up kind of honing in on what really mattered to you, and what your personal, I think you call it in this piece, like what your dreams are, and then like use the institutions you're a part of to help you kind of get there. What was that like for you? How did that end up like bringing you to investing in Pace?
Yeah, I think like every time I join a new organization, I'm the type of person that will write a piece about it, but in a very like kind of just trying to be intentional and like just share why I do the thing I do. And I feel like for other people to ask that questions usually is helpful. It's not about like whether the decision that I make is the best one. It's more about these are the set of questions that I ask. It's similar with like, finding a co-founder or starting a company. Like these are the set of questions that I want to ask.
Yeah.
And yeah, you shared some candid career advice. That's when my former manager at NEA, which is my former firm, he kind of came to my school and gave a really good, just some candid career advice with a small group of students, and I found them really, really good. So I decided to share. But in terms of kind of how I make career decisions, I think it's always very kind of, I guess, Socratic with my friends. So I think I'm so blessed. I think like why I am able to achieve even anything I haven't yet, but fingers crossed, anything in life is because we're so disciplined around asking each other why we do the thing we do. So I see that Chris just changed his bio to like lead with intentionality or something like that. But I think that is so true within Pace. And that's why the first day we joined, and even the first time I talked to Jordan, we kind of align on that. It's just like we always ask, like every decision that we make has a trade-offs, has has a cost to it. We also like to talk about that. It's like it has value, it has cost, and like what does that mean, and how does this decision align to our top values? And like I think we're very value aligned. That's why when we work together, it's pretty seamless. It doesn't mean that we share the same exact top values, but just means that we can respect one another's top values. So I feel like that's the most important thing in my career. It's just like values driven.
That makes a lot of sense. We actually were just talking to a friend who I think worked at Facebook for a long time, and he was bootstrapping ideas for. It sounded like some sort of like, can you help pair people if they don't have the Socratic circle that you're talking about for making career decisions? Do you think it's possible to build some sort of platform that helps make that happen, or is it something that like intrinsically has to be organic? Like, could you pair someone with 2 or 3 people that they are then texting all the time to get kind of like ideas and feedback with, or like how do you insert this into the career process in a more accessible way for people who don't have that network built up?
That's a great question. Like another piece that's down further down my list is called like microtherapy. Or like so it's like I think everyone at some point in their career or life needs some nudges, and just like a friendly voice to ask them how they're doing. And it can be a very short thing, just ask you like, oh, why are you doing the things you do, but in a way that's natural. So it's a very hard balance to do, especially when you have to put it into software. Just everything feels a little forced, but maybe it can be text or something like that. But actually, the back end is, maybe a machine. But asking the right question at the right point is actually the thing that software does really well. So like we're still kind of thinking about, if a combination of like beautiful writing with GPT-3 and, being able to capture you in the right journey in time can provide that effect.
Yeah.
Have you seen the experimentation that James Yu has been doing on Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
With pseudo-write?
So cool.
Yeah. Kind of takes GPT as a creative input for writing.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow, I love these topics. I feel like you should just do a Fake Pixels like jam session, pick 2 or 3 topics, just get people together, and through conversation, I bet you would end up writing like a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That
sounds like fun.
More. Thank you so much for having me on this. Like I feel like so self-indulgent to talk about all these things that just live in my head.
Oh, it's great. We love it.
We're gonna have transcripting soon, so if you actually want to like experiment with something like that, you totally should. Just have like an open kind of thought lab conversation about different topics.
Oh, using Highlighter as a platform?
Yeah, if you wanted, you could have like a bunch of people on.
Okay. Sorry,
we'll have the transcript going.
Ooh, awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that's an option.
Yeah, we're just starting to like tinker around with having kind of hosts besides us. We've just been playing with it for our own use so far, but I think they're interesting things we're like dreaming up and experimenting with people. So that could be fun if you are into it too.
Ooh, okay. I'm down to try.
Well, we can also help you if you decide you want to do something, you want to try out being a host. We can actually help you operate the thing because right now we're still simplifying some of the interactions to change cameras and stuff. But if you decide you want to do it, we're here for you to help be your ops team.
Thank you. This is so fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely pull out some good highlights and share them out.
Awesome.
We covered interesting ground.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
Cool.
Thank you.
Bye.
We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Wow, that was super fun.
Yeah.
So many different directions. I'm actually really excited to read her Lost in Translation piece. I hope she does publish that. I know she's probably got a full schedule with companies she's meeting and probably hard to find time to write such a deep piece, but
Yeah, that was really cool. I like that idea of keeping just like a running spreadsheet roster of ideas and thoughts to write more about.
yeah, it almost makes me, maybe it was just the context we were talking about it, but if you wanted to, where would you host all of your in progress docs? I almost feel like it's an about.me, like, a Beacons AI, Nexus GG website builder where you just link all of your work in progress writing.
Space, like a collection space.
Yeah. Because if they're really such fragments, they're not, it's not like you want to like take it and tweet each one of them, or you sort of want people to be able to browse and dive in and contribute or navigate around to whatever they want versus trying to sort them through your Twitter or something. Not that you shouldn't tweet them, but
could kind of do it on Google Docs. It's not like the nicest UI, but you could have like folders and subfolders with stuff. It's kind of like their desktop concept, which I actually really like. I didn't think about this.
We should have asked her about that.
Yeah, but like, I mean, the bulletin board idea that we've been talking about is kind of like the desktop that they've made for their firm. Like if everyone had a public desktop, it's kind of what we're saying.
I'm going to actually link it here, so that in case anybody's watching along. But the Pace Capital, so pacecapital.com, the website, it's kind of a metaphor of a desktop computer, and you can click around. Actually, I'm trying to get to it. Right now when I click on it, I'm getting just their brand, but I thought there was, where was the desktop? Maybe it's linked off of here. Oh, it's desktop.pacecapital. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, that was the wrong link. I'm actually just going to update my link in place.
Oh, yeah. This is so cool.
So it's kind of the Frameworks 2.0 is kind of one of your apps. Oh, I didn't realize you can actually drag them around and move them.
So
Hiring
three of them right differently, it looks like. I don't know Jordan, but I'm looking at his blog, and it's just like a old school WordPress.
Mm-hmm. So I clicked on hiring for value. So who is the author? This is published by Google Drive. But is this Jordan or Chris? Frameworks.fig, and then it links to a Figma.
Yeah, this is cool. Portfolio.
I wish we had screen share.
It's actually cool to look at their portfolio. We've talked about some of these, but not all of them. Beam.
Okay,
what is this?
So, which one? Beam?
A browser where ideas take shape at the speed of thought. A new way to collect your thoughts and experience the internet. Sounds like it could be maybe related to what we're talking about.
Oh, cool. So it says coming soon to your Mac. So it sounds like it's a desktop client. New way to collect your thoughts and experience here. So it sounds almost like I guess they call it a browser where ideas take shape. So it does sound something like I'm going to actually...
Here's the press release. Beam raises $10 million to build a web browser that collects ideas. I don't know what that means. Oh, this is cool. We've talked about this a lot. Previous article on the company. Every time you search for something, it creates a new session. Each session is represented by a note card. When you're done browsing, the note card summarizes your findings. That's cool.
The note card. So you're taking notes in this card space, and then you have your own summary.
I guess if you Google like creator economy fintech. It creates a note card for you, and then maybe that starts aggregating like every link that you, if you spend 20 minutes browsing the web on that topic, it'll make a little portfolio of.
Oh, cool.
How I'm understanding this.
Right. So effectively, yeah, that's interesting. So effectively, your query kind of identifies what's on your mind, what you're trying to achieve, right? And that sets the context for the card. But then your activities after the query become your curation of like what is a good response to that query.
Yeah, like this is a good quote from the second article that I just posted in chat.
If you're passionate about a niche topic, chances are you can learn a lot.
Oh, so one of the founders, I think. Yeah, one of the founders is an investor in Rome, which seems similar, but he's saying that it doesn't solve for that effect when you browse the web because if you're putting something in Rome, it's a very intentional activity versus sort of just like picks up ambient drafts of what you're doing anyway, and then you can go through it later, it seems like. I'm designing this for people who don't take notes.
Right.
Pretty interesting.
Where is that idea expressed?
The second TechCrunch article.
Oh, let's see. I see. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea. I feel like people have been trying to find the right way to solve this problem for a long time. This seems like some novel observations that we haven't really seen applied to the problem before. So when I think about it before, you take something like, I think at Google, there was this product that was like, I think it was called Notebook or something, where each page had its own notebook idea, almost like a little pop-up that could help you write notes about that particular page. But I think this whole problem is going to end up, the actual solution is going to be so dependent on just nailing the perfect UX. And it may be that like the UX of the notes on a page is too page specific, and the actual UX that I think Beam is proposing is right after the query before the page, which sounds like subtle, but I think it actually just dramatically changes the kind of aggregation point and what's included and what's not included and how the organization of the information works. So actually, I noticed Tina's back. Should we ask her more about Beam, or maybe I don't know if she wants to talk about it.
If you want to come up again, Tina, just tell us in chat. We're just jamming.
So tell Tina. Okay, after Tina left the stage, we were further curious about Pace, and so we were looking at the desktop app of Pace, which I think, according to Chris, was mostly designed by Tina. And then we stumbled on this Beam, and that is very intriguing.
And that is our rabbit hole right now.
That's our rabbit hole. Okay. So when you close the tab, you have a new card. Your search query is the title of the card. And you can see all links onto that note. Combining passive note creation with a tiny nudge, you have to reflect on your web activity. And then do these cards get published? Or are they personal use?
I don't know if they're just for you or not. It sounded like they might be.
Because I think personal notes in this format seem highly utilitarian and valuable and kind of easy to explain to people why they should do it. But then I think if you can get the right UX where like, hey, I'm going to leave my own thoughts here, and they're useful to me, but they may also be useful to other people. I think that's kind of like, I think Rome has that single player daily journal use case, but the interesting stuff in Roam in my mind is the like public roams and the across the network ideas and content information that get shared across the network. And I wonder if these notes, maybe they start utilitarian and later become cross network, kind of if the Roam, path were, if that may be the right exploration path.
If you had a browser where how Spotify shows you on the side, which is so under optimized right now, but it shows you what your friends are listening to like at this moment. If you could do like this would be a lot to expose, but you could choose when to turn it on and off, I guess. But what if I could just like observe what DK was browsing at this moment?
Right.
Have his little footprint of like his last card that he created, maybe.
Right.
Researching. So, I don't know.
Yeah. So I built this with some friends like 10 years ago.
Oh,
we
really?
made a Chrome extension. It was very simple. It was like a hack project. It was not like productized, but we just wanted to see how it would feel. So we built a Chrome extension that we each installed and didn't tie an identity. And then every URL we visited got contributed to like a common website that we could all collectively see.
That's so cool.
If you visit one place, then that URL gets published. And I think at least the first version, I don't think we ever put any attribution to who was doing what when, but everyone had a timestamp, and you could often tell who the person was based on some other, like if you have Gmail open, there's like sometimes, there's some kind of hashtags, keys that get associated with the URL there. So there were different ways, or you could see if somebody did a search for like my friend was searching, I think he was going to go to South by Southwest. So he was searching for like, Airbnbs in Austin or something. Yeah. So you can kind of, based on the time stamps, you can kind of group it and figure out roughly which friend was doing which activity. But that idea of like co-browsing the web, I mean, that was an extremely passive version of this. I think one of the reasons we thought it was like intriguing, but not actually a broad scale usage, was because it was like too passive. So, it's like, it's too open everything. But I like about this is it has this kind of, you make proactive actions to decide what to organize in which ways. And I think the more that it's personal utility only, it might be easy to start, but less impactful. But maybe that's the starting point to get the cross network stuff. But what I really want to see, like your Spotify example, like there's no, I guess in the music domain, maybe I listen to like, music that you think is kind of stupid, and that's maybe somewhat embarrassing, but it's not that personal. It's just like, maybe you'd conclude that I have bad taste in music. But if you can actually see, all the websites that I'm searching and what I'm learning about, you actually have a much deeper understanding of my thought processes, and people might not be, excited about those getting, so it almost seems like that curation step of like, I'm going to take this note in this context where it's publicly visible and meant to be shared. It seems like the right bar, more or less, but finding the right kind of use cases and behaviors that really unlock it seems still challenging. There's stuff to figure out there.
Yeah, totally.
It's very intriguing though. Finishing this article.
Yeah.
There was also Katarina Fake tried to do a thing around kind of note leaving in the physical world, like around GPS locations. Did you ever see that?
Mm-mm.
Let me see if I can find something about it. This was a while back. Findery, formerly called Pinwheel. So it was kind of this, imagine like, well, I don't know what to imagine. Maybe imagine like a maps product or like a check-in type product, almost Foursquare, but where the purpose of checking in is to leave notes. And I think you could leave like notes to people, so that when like I could leave a note in San Francisco at at, I don't know, the Young Museum, so that when Mishti or any other friend visits the Young Museum, you get a little note from me telling you which exhibits I enjoyed most or something.
That's so cool. Yeah, there's two interesting behaviors that I've been kind of noticing, and I don't know if people are like working on these as products or anything. One is that a lot more friends than I would have expected earlier have their Find My Friends on all the time with a specific group of people, and like actually use it a lot to see like where people are people free, or like they'll have these kind of using group messaging in conjunction with like selective location sharing. Also maps, like we kind of talked about this when we had our travel themed lunch break, but my cousin asked me for like vegan restaurant recommendations in downtown New York. I just sent him my like map where I just put a bunch of stuff that I like or I want to visit, but I've kind of gotten like other people's maps and sent my maps to other people fast as sort of like shortcuts to, oh, you're visiting X place, like check this out. But it reminds me of like sticking a note in the museum concept as well.
Yeah. Do you know this? There's a tool that was also related to kind of social mapping that I think Snapchat acquired. Do you recall what that one was?
Mm-mm.
Let me see. I think I'll find it if I poke around a little bit. Oh, Zenly. A live map of your friends and family is the most fun way to meet up or just to see what's up. So even when you're apart, you can feel together.
Did that become Snapchat's map?
I am not certain of the whole lineage here, but yeah, I think that they are closely related. I think it may be that Zenly was acquired by Snap and now
pretty much adapted to Snap map, which a lot of people seem to use also.
Yeah, okay. I see let's see, June of 2017, Snapchat acquired social map app Zenly. So yeah, I think it did sort of, because I think Zenly originally started, it may still operate out of France. Maybe it was Paris-based, if I recall. But yeah, I think that behavior you're talking about of like kind of selective sharing of, within groups and stuff is like selective sharing of location is super interesting. And I think we haven't really seen, maybe Zenly is one of the early examples that's really at scale. But if you could also annotate with notes and leave notes, I think, maybe you solve it in a different context and then like notes become like ride along information that also kind of enhances the experience.
Yeah.
But it does seem like, humanity needs this thing. Like it's the idea maze, I guess, need to sort to how do you navigate to get it there.
Wait, I don't know if Max is free right now, but I'm just gonna invite him up in case. Because he had some stuff to say before as well. But I'm not sure if he's doing something else on the side. He says,
he's saying
to use maps that will know if you're available for a call or text.
Right. There's an interesting one here too. Did we ever talk about Phone a Friend?
Yes. Yeah.
So Rohan of Clubhouse fame built a tool like maybe 4 or 5 years ago called Phone a Friend, and the core concept was when you're driving in your car and you want to, you're available for an audio, a phone call, but not available for texting. You can actually like hit the Phone a Friend button and it would broadcast to anybody on your Phone a Friend list that you're available for a phone call, and then they make the connections. And so what he's saying here is use maps to let people know you're available for a call or text. And so what this did, actually, one of the features of Phone a Friend was that it would observe your your GPS and accelerometer data and your phone, and it would send you a push note when it thinks you're driving. It would say, "Hey, are you like ready for a Phone a Friend?" So it actually had like context there. I think it was like background GPS. It could observe that. It would let you know when you might want to phone a friend.
That's so cool. One of the things, I always think about like how people, because I call random people during the day. That's just what I do.
Yeah.
Especially driving. Definitely one of my moves. But I wonder if there's a way to, with all the spam calls, if you could like swipe across like your phone, for example, if, you want to even accept the call. So if that person's like not on like an approved list, maybe like you could swipe across your phone to like actually accept the call. And if, they're not on your approved list, like maybe the call wouldn't go through. I don't know. I think a lot about those things because they're so annoying, like robocall, things like that.
Yeah.
Have you seen the there are networks of like call blockers, and I think it's more a phenomenon on Android, and I think it's actually particularly really large in India, where you can use third-party apps that will affect your dialer or phone service, and you can have a third-party app installed to, when a phone number shows up, this third-party app will indicate if that number has been marked as spam by lots of people. And so it becomes like this network knowledge around how spam is working. And, because of the more, different security model, let's say, of Android, you can do it on Android, but you can't do such a thing on iOS. But I think they're very, very popular on Android.
Wow. I actually have never heard of that. That's so cool. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to find the name of it. It looks like Haya.com is one. I'm not sure if that's the one. I saw one years ago. I don't know if this might be rebranded. And all the carriers now have their own.
Yeah. I want to ask Max about this article that you're writing on A24.
So it's funny because
yeah,
I've been having this on the back burner for so long. And so someone actually posted on Twitter, they were like, does anyone know anything about A24? Thinking about writing a Substack on it. And this person who posted it, like a ton. And I was like, yeah, I can offer you a few little tidbits because I've looked into it myself. Like what drives A24 to like this cult status. And I was talking to some people in the film industry of like, how did A24 get on the map and, what are they doing right that everyone else is not really getting? So part of the thesis I have is that A24 is a small budget, firm, right? It's not like, the big Sonys or the Universals, right? So they're able to take on low budget films and low budget filmmaking because in the film industry, you have to, if you're some of these big companies, swing for the fences and put a ton of money into these budgets to create these franchises, which then return, all this money. So, for example, like Moonlight, right, which was a huge film for A24. So that I think was like a $1.5 to like $2 million budget. Like Lady Bird was a $10 million budget. Yeah. And they grossed like, $30 million on these films, right, which is a huge return for them. So, and just a huge return for anybody. So that was one of the main things that I found like in a business sense that really separated A24. And then also just the way that they connect via social media to everybody. Because again, they don't have the advertising budgets to, go advertise on, ESPN or whatever for the new, Marvel movies or whatever. They have to use this organic social media presence, and they've been able to capitalize on that better than anybody else in the industry. So yeah, read this article.
How long have they, or how did they get their start, or sort of where did they have one early breakout 10 years ago, or what's sort of the genesis of this?
Yeah, so I mean they haven't been around for that long. Basically in the last like 10 years or so. But I'd say one of their like earlier films, for example, was Spring Breakers, which was this film featuring Selena Gomez. And it was kind of it was a film that was a little bit raunchy and got her out of her, Disney character that everybody, thought of her previously in. So that kind of, they made a whole like Oscar pitch, that, someone should win. I think it was James Franco. So that kind of put them on a map a little bit. And then they just have been churning out film after film and just crushing it. So, yeah.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now, which I just shared. So it looks like August 30th, 2012 is when it was started.
Yeah, so 10 years.
And I didn't realize this, but they became better known after picking up U.S. rights to Ex Machina and Room.
Yep.
which are both, both films I saw and loved. I didn't realize they were all A24.
Mm.
Yeah, Ex Machina was one of my favorite films as well, and definitely a lot of implications for what we talk about on Lunchbreak a lot.
Yep.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, for sure.
But yeah, so
it's interesting as the thing that A24 represents is it feels like it's another example of this trend that we see a lot of, which we're talking about sort of how do you finance creativity and how do you sort of create collectives. It seems like what you're describing is it's a lower budget, and so that when you make money, you don't have to have everything swing for the fences, but you can actually have like great returns for everybody involved if you can just make the economics work differently than kind of the old one. It probably means you have access to different types of talent and different types of filmmakers and different types of stories and content that might not have gotten told if you need the kind of full mass market thing. So you have like all this new types of these niches of content, and these could be 100 million people niches or something, or maybe even larger.
Yeah.
But you don't need to be just like the Marvel superheroes,
No, you
kind of one size fits all content.
You hit it right on the spot, because these big Universal, Sony, whatever it is, these big companies can't really afford to take a loss on $100 million budget, whereas A24 can lose $2, $3, $4 million, and it's not that big of a deal, right? So that's why they can take the chance on Barry Jenkins, who created Moonlight and then has gone on to do other great stuff. So they're able to take that initial creative risk and then parlay that into the next great film.
I'm curious have you looked at sort of the distribution of economics in the films? Because one thing that whenever I think about these kinds of things, I'm thinking about like the risk reward trade offs in the portfolio that they're constructing here. And so, is it the case that like it's a very power law driven, like there's probably Minari, I guess, is gonna win out the top of everything that they probably ever imagined. But if I assume the model actually works really well even without the Minaris of the world, which is just the triple 10x Grand Slam. But is the model of how you produce films and kind of foster creativity, is it still top 10% of their films make 90% of their dollars or more, and then the bottom 90% kind of try to exist and try to maybe pay for themselves, and some lose money and some break even? Or is there a flatter curve overall, and even the winners, if we exclude Minari, even the winners are not too far, not too many standard deviations away from the revenue of the successful, but more the middle torso of that curve.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm getting at, like with with basically being able to take those creative risks and lose like $2, $3, $4 million, almost like venture, right? I haven't done the analysis, but I think that would be a great idea, and I think I might do that this weekend. So like look at all their films and see, is it the top 3, 4 that's like returning the fund, right?
Yeah.
And I think that would be really interesting. But so I was talking to this fellow who runs acquisitions for Sony, and he was saying that there's always been like low budget, independent, companies like A24, right? And what gets them in trouble is when they start overpaying for these, and
right.
New directors. So it's like, how does A24, which has this brand acclaim right now, how do they stay disciplined and not overpay for deals, basically?
Right.
So,
and I don't know all of what their ambitions or paths are, but I would assume that there's natural market forces that would cause them to want to be a little bit more aggressive, or use their winnings from one to be a little more aggressive. And so that might be on the sort of like overpaying side. But I think, let's say in concert with that, there's also a growing audience who has interest in what else they have to put out. And so maybe they can afford to overpay. What we say overpay, it's in quotes really. Maybe they can afford to overpay a little bit because their audience is growing a lot, and the interest in them as a tastemaker production company, studio, publisher, may actually be on the rise, at a faster rate than they sort of are earning a lot more distribution, which helps them, be able to participate in like a bigger league and hopefully not lose the essence of what makes them special.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I know Tina mentioned, for example, like their exclusive networks. They're trying to, bring that more in-house instead of licensing, it out to some of the, to theaters or whatever. So it's an interesting shift that, they're actually building like an exclusive network, right? Instead of releasing it into theaters, which obviously during COVID was not a great business proposition. So all stuff to look out for, and hopefully I'll be able to finally finish this article.
Yeah, I'm curious as you're looking at it, because you mentioned sort of the relationship to venture, and that's kind of, that's an idea that's always on my mind because it's an ecosystem I'm more familiar with. And I wonder, we recently saw, you're familiar with indie.vc?
Yeah, of course.
So we recently saw indie.vc throw in the towel, and I don't know that I've read enough yet about sort of what were the learnings and which parts of it did look promising and which parts of it, didn't work well enough to continue pursuing it. But I wonder, I guess one of the obvious kind of, places to have concern in that model is that if you don't have the huge winners to pay for things, you have to keep, you're always kind of under the gun in a sense. You never have the big outliers. And I wonder if like the model of indie VC actually would work or should work if you were to tune a few parameters differently. And is there something that A24 has figured out in the film industry that can tune those parameters in, maybe we figure out collectively how to do this in film, and then can we take those and backport those to figure out how to tune to make, a similar model work in, kind of technology financing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Film financing, I definitely see the parallels in between, venture and doing that as well. Like originally I wanted to do film financing. I thought it was the coolest thing. Still kind of,
that's so cool.
Yeah, still kind of do, but we'll see. But you gave me some great.
Is that are you involved in the film industry?
No, not at all.
Oh.
I just thought like it was so cool. How some of these films are financed. Like, where does the money come from? Who finances these Broadway shows?
Yeah.
Had a couple great conversations with people doing it. There's this company actually that is funded. There's this company called, oh my God, what is it? Eldridge Industries, which is backed by some, I think, Guggenheim Investment Bank that actually seeded A24. So they had this massive cash pile to kind of start off with, which was definitely interesting.
Oh, interesting. And so Eldridge Industries, is that I'm looking at their website, manages businesses across diversified industries, headquartered in Greenwich with offices in New York, London, Beverly Hills?
Yeah.
So it's across media and maybe a bunch of other categories too?
Yeah.
Let's see, I'm popping up. I wasn't familiar with it, but oops. Sorry, I just duplicated your link there.
Whoa.
Oh, like Rolling Stone?
Huh.
Yeah, they own the Hollywood Reporter, I think. Part of the Dodgers at some point.
Oh, yeah. Dodgers, Billboard,
so
Epic Games.
Were you exploring like getting into this space at all, Max?
Yeah.
Or how would you like explore a career in film financing if you were starting from like nothing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I originally, I think it was 2 summers ago, talked to some people in the film financing group at JP Morgan. But I think for me, it's not necessarily about like being on the banking side. It would be like actually figuring out like who are the directors and having that creative lens to saying that guy's going to make it, and I want to back that person. Just like in venture, right? It's like you see that person and you're like, wow, I want to be a part of anything that they come up with creatively. So yeah, that kind of appealed to me.
Yeah.
I assume there must be some changes in the world, in the way distribution and taste making and kind of everything that happens in Hollywood, publishing, studio, TV, movies, etc., is all undergoing like dramatic change right now. Whether it's from the forces of the creative tools and creator economy, or TikTok or Snapchat, all kinds of different forces. So it almost seems like certainly one path is align with the existing players and figure out sort of move the world forward from there. But I wonder, are there going to be new like what layers will new platforms and taste making and financing occur? Will there be I'm just going to throw one out and you can react to it and tell me if this is crazy. But we were talking earlier about kind of newsletters, and you could imagine like somebody writes a really great, kind of the indie filmmaking, taste making newsletter that does all the reviews each week or month of like all the best movies, and then that builds the audience basically for free, right, through just like content creation. You build the audience of everybody interested in indie films. Once you have that audience, you could go talk to anybody with a pile of money and be like, hey, we have the audience, we can use our taste making to network with directors and find a project that we want to finance. And so I wonder if there's I wonder if there are ways to piece together some of the new tools to actually create a new form of kind of audience capital, filmmaking, a new aggregation point, a new kind of taste making hub for that. It feels like ripe. I don't know why that wouldn't work. But have you thought about like, is that the right path, or are there like a dozen others that one might explore?
Yeah, so I'm smiling because you hit it right on the head, because one of the things that I'm most excited about right now is, so I don't know if you know, but Casey Neistat originally started filmmaking with his brother Van, and is an incredible filmmaker. And what Van Neistat is doing right now is he is actually releasing a series on YouTube, but is being funded through Kickstarter, actually. And so that is a really interesting model, right? Because he is not getting paid, from ticket sales. He's not getting paid from ads necessarily. He's getting financed, by everyone who loves his work. And I'm really interested to see what happens. I think it's called like the Spirited Gentleman or Spirited Man, I think it's called. Definitely take a look at it. And I think he's raised like $30,000 already doing this. And I can't wait to see what he comes up with. So
right.
I think
the Spirited Man. Yeah, I'm just Googling this.
This reminds me a little bit, it was quite a while back, maybe, I guess, 2014, but Zach Braff, who already had a brand and visibility within Hollywood, wanted to do his own independent films. This was post Garden State. He kind of wanted to do kind of Garden State 2, but on his own terms. So he did a Kickstarter and raised financing on Kickstarter for this movie called Wish I Was Here. And then he was able to retain a lot more creative control and actually make the movie he wanted without a lot of distracting voices involved in it. Actually, I was a backer of this Kickstarter and he did a showing in San Francisco, and it was kind of cool to see like the filmmaker be able to talk about their stuff. But I think he comes with a lot of advantages from, I guess like similar to the Casey Neistat's brother, presumably has a lot of distribution advantages. Zach Braff had a lot of distribution advantages, so maybe there are ways to use existing distribution advantages to help, or maybe bundle and build new distribution channels.
And if you really wanted to get cute, then you can start, issuing NFTs, right? And then, right? I think honestly, Disney and, Universal and Sony actually are in the best position with, they probably won't because they're incumbents, but they should really capitalize on their intellectual property in films and things like this, package, issue a non-fungible token for some of their IP, right? So if they have,
Mm-hmm.
they could do theoretically ticket sales this way. They could also release, exclusives for, Cinderella stuff or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think,
Yeah.
I think that they could really be on the cutting edge if they wanted to, of this whole like convergence between digital and physical assets.
Yeah. Tell them.
Yeah, one day.
So I don't know. I don't know that we've ever talked much. I mean, we've obviously we've been together on Lunchbreak a bunch in the past, but I don't know that I have a lot of visibility into your sort of background or professional pursuits. Is that something relevant to these ideas, or are these kind of hobby type things that you're imagining for the future? Or?
Yeah, great question. So definitely we'll talk offline, but I have a lot of ideas. I'm always trying to think of new ones and connect with, talk to a lot of people like my age as well who, have some of these ideas. And I think one of them will be worth pursuing. And then I will definitely expend all of my energy. I have a lot of, as you know, to do that.
You are the best.
Right.
Awesome.
I'm just in the wait and see moments. Yeah.
Great. Well, if you ever want to bring ideas to jam on around kind of what are these paths, we'd certainly always like to have you here and always happy to chat about them.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, guys. As always, really enjoyed talking with you guys. And I'll let you know when I get this A24 article out and have you.
Yeah. Please, yeah. Let's move Tina in too. We should show her what you're up to if you love it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I got to bounce, but thanks so much, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Max.
Bye.
All right. See ya. Wow. I can't really go on. Yeah.
I'm really excited for Transcript because I'm just thinking every single thing that we talk about could just be a blog and with some light editing.
Yeah. We have all these like almost like breadcrumbs that should launch into their own blog posts at some point.
Yeah.
Actually, I like the idea of these breadcrumbs turning into like, leave the breadcrumb and then people who see the clip and are inspired or attracted to the idea could then launch from the breadcrumb into the Google Doc and then kind of pursue the collaborative writing process together.
Yeah. We should just try it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess once we have highlights more easily kind of creatable and shareable on platform, that'll be easier to experiment with.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we covered a lot today at Lunchbreak.
Yeah.
And I've only had a few mangoes, so I should try to get a proper lunch.
Sounds good.
Maybe we'll wrap for today.
Cool.
Okay.
Right, see ya.
So I should try to get a proper lunch.
Sounds good.
Maybe we'll wrap for today.
Cool.
Okay.
Right, see ya.
Yeah.